with Ramadan right around the corner, I have a genuine question for my fellow moms. When was the last time you walked out of Ramadan genuinely transformed and changed? When was the last Ramadan where you felt so spiritually rejuvenated and so connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you came out of Ramadan fully renewed? When was the last time you had a Ramadan where you checked off every single worship item and to-do list and you spent your nights at the masjid in the community with the heartfelt du'as and the charity campaigns? I'm guessing if you have young children, that was probably a long time ago. If you have multiple children, then it's probably been years since you had a Ramadan like this. Experiencing Ramadan as a mother is something that not a lot of people speak about, and it is such a different experience for us. For some of us, we're pregnant, we're not feeling our best. For some of us, we're nursing, and we're also feeling depleted. And for those of us who choose to fast while nursing, that in and of itself is a mission. For those of us with young children, we are torn between figuring out our own ibadah and what exactly we're going to do this Ramadan, and making sure that our children understand the essence of Ramadan and they also experience a great Ramadan. And the household that you have to manage, the iftars and the food and the feeding schedules that you have to organize. It's not just managing food, it's also managing sleep schedules. If you have toddlers and infants, you have to organize quiet time for the older ones and nap time for the little ones. And you have to do all of that while most of the time that you're fasting. So Ramadan all of a sudden becomes a full schedule where you can barely squeeze in your acts of worship. I had this realization years ago. At that time, I had just had my third, and I said to myself, why don't people talk about Ramadan as a mom and how it looks and feels so different? People don't talk about the identity loss that happens around Ramadan when you become a mom, because you compare your pre-motherhood Ramadan life to your motherhood Ramadan life. And there is a sense of mourning and grief that comes with that, because you yearn for that experience of Ramadan that you once had. And now you have to relearn a whole entire way of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the month of Ramadan. And it's not easy. Let me repeat that again. It's not easy. If anyone makes it look like it is a smooth sailing, maybe they're not giving you the full picture. Experiencing Ramadan as a mother is relearning how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this new set of responsibilities. In a way, it's figuring out your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and finding your path back towards Him on a whole new different platform. And I find that not a lot of people make space for this transition. People expect you to just snap back and continue Ramadan as it always has, but how? You're sleep deprived. You wake up multiple times a night. You need to figure out how to keep your children occupied while you're fasting during the day, how to keep them educated, keep them in school. If you're homeschooling, it's continuing teaching them. It also means nurturing their Islamic identity by cultivating experiences that teaches them what Ramadan is about. It's about figuring out what suhoor and iftar will look like. It is about figuring out what your night prayer is going to look like. And most of the time, it's going to be years since you go back to the masjid because you have a baby that needs to go to sleep. And for those of us who say, well, no, I'm not going to change anything about my schedule. I'm going to take my kids to the masjid. Kudos to you. But for some others, they'd rather be home, because taking your young children who are going to fall asleep to the masjid is exhausting. You have to make sure that your children do not disturb the worship of other people. So there's a lot that goes into it. And if you look over to your spouse, nothing changes about that man's schedule. He's still going to the masjid every single night for every single prayer, for taraweeh and tahajjud, and he is part of the community. And here you are, stuck at home, putting babies to sleep and trying to figure out, how are you going to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala today? If you were experiencing Ramadan like I was a few years ago, and this hits home for you, I just want to let you know that you're not alone. So many women go through what you're going through, but I do feel like there is a solution and there is a way to make Ramadan yours. This is how I started a series years ago called Ramadan in Pieces, because I realized after having 3 kids at the time, I had to do something about how I'm going to experience Ramadan, and it couldn't be the way I experienced it pre-kids. I actually started to feel anxious around Ramadan because of the massive responsibilities that awaited me. One day I sat down and I said, okay, what if I looked at Ramadan in pieces? 30 small pieces. And I just took one piece at a time, one step at a time. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you're very familiar with this approach. And it is an approach that resonated with a large group of moms, and they really appreciated it. Fast forward today, I want to give you a practical framework that you can follow. Because back then, after I figured out how to take Ramadan in small pieces, that gave me the momentum to figure out a framework that can support me in Ramadan. I feel like you cannot lead your flock without some sort of structure and a framework that holds it all together for you. In this video, I'm going to walk you through practical steps you're going to take, 6 in particular, of how you're going to design your best Ramadan yet. And the goal is to make it low effort, high impact. Because we don't need more to do. We just need to be strategic about how we do things as mothers. And after that, if you want to go deeper, for those of you who really want to have an accepted Ramadan, because if you're a Muslim, why wouldn't you? I'm going to encourage you to join my free workshop called Reclaim Your Ramadan as a Mother. How to design your accepted Ramadan in 3 simple steps. I've been running this workshop for a few years now, and mothers come back to it and take it again every single year, including myself, because it gives you unmatched clarity on how you're going to worship Ramadan. And when you learn this framework, you're not going to look at Ramadan the same again. So check out the workshop later on. But first, let's get into the 6 steps I'm going to share with you, because these 6 steps are not mentioned in the workshop. The first place I'm going to get you to get started with now before we enter Ramadan is to change your mindset around Ramadan. Most of the time, especially for those of us who are born in Islam, we see Ramadan as a repeated event. If we're lucky, of course, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us life. We see it as a thing that we do every single year. This year, I want you to break that pattern, and I want you to see Ramadan as a brand new event and experience. I don't want you to carry on what you did last Ramadan. You're going to see it as a brand new event, as a brand new experience. And I want you to choose the identity that you want to claim. Think about how you want to feel at the end of Ramadan. Claim that identity. Write it down if you need to, and walk into Ramadan with this brand new identity. So let me repeat that again. You're going to see Ramadan as a brand new event and not a repeated one. And you're going to choose the identity that you want to claim, the one that you want to feel in Ramadan. And you're going to claim that identity right then and there. Unfortunately, most of the ways that we prepare for Ramadan is external, right? Every time someone talks about, let's prepare for Ramadan, we're talking about meal preps and to-do lists. We don't play that game. We play the internal game, because that's where the real change happens. All right, let's move on to our next step. You are going to buy a brand new journal and a brand new pen. Make it cute and exciting for you. If you are a hoarder of stationery, then maybe you don't need to go buy one. You're going to dedicate this notebook specifically for this month of Ramadan. You can put a beautiful title, and on that first page, you are going to write down the identity that you want to claim, the person that you aspire to become. You are her. You're going to write her down. The person that you want to be experiencing by the end of Ramadan, the version of you that's going to be celebrating it guilt-free because she knows that she maximized her Ramadan and felt it to her core. You're going to write down her identity. And when I say identity, pick the one that speaks the most to you. Maybe this year in Ramadan, you really want to feel connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so focus just on that. Maybe this year you want to focus more on perfecting your worship, so write that down. After that, you're going to make a list. You're going to write down 3 lofty, grandiose du'as. Ones that you know that are only going to be possible by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you're going to write 3 that are achievable, that you know you can get done with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you put the right effort in place. So for example, one can be, I want to own land in a Muslim country one day, in Medina, for example. And the other one could be, I want to lose 50 pounds. In total here, you have 6 things that you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accomplish for you. Great. Now, your next step. Take each goal you have written and give it its own page, a full page. So you're going to have 6 pages that are empty, but at the top, you're going to write that dream, that goal, that dua. Once you're done with that, what you're going to do is you're going to come back, and underneath each of these goals, you're going to write down what your morning routine looks like as someone who already has this. So in our example, as someone who already owns land in Medina, what does your morning routine look like? And then you're going to write down your senses, okay? So seeing, hearing, tasting, and so on. You're going to write down all the senses, and this is where you really need to embody the end goal. You want to embody the vision that says you already have this thing. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you tasting? You're going to write that down. And you're going to do that for every single dua. So you're going to have 6 pages filled out. Now, once you go back and you read this, you're going to find some patterns. I want you to find one common denominator between all of these du'as, and you're going to write that down. Now, you're going to turn that common denominator and you are going to embody it and practice it now for the 30 days of Ramadan. The next step is that you're going to take these 6 goals and you're going to write them down in a form of dua. So, Ya Allah, I ask you for XYZ. So you should have 6 duas written down. You're going to screenshot it and keep it on your phone. The next step is that every single day for the next 30 days, you're going to make these duas during suhoor. So before Fajr, you're going to make these duas during iftar. So right when you break your fast with dates and water, have the phone ready next to you and you're making these duas. And you're going to make it on every single Friday of Ramadan between Asr and Maghrib. These are times when duas are mostly accepted. And finally, the last step is make sure that you're not doing anything that blocks your duas. So this is the part where you have to give up a sin if there is a sin that you're committing. You want to make sure that your purification and your prayers are on point. And you want to make sure that you're not consuming anything haram because these things can block the acceptance of our duas. I have an entire list that you're going to find inside the Reclaim Ramadan workshop. There's a whole kit in there and bonuses that you can enjoy. If you have the question of, okay, man, this is a great starting point, but now I want to dive into the worship. That's what I talk about. Inside the workshop, I give you a practical pyramid method to maximize your worship as a busy mom. Make sure that you register for the workshop. It's absolutely free. And I hope that I'm going to see you there. I hope this video was beneficial for you. And I pray that you have one of your best Ramadans yet. Until next time, take care. Assalamu alaikum.